Köszönöm szépen, elnök asszony. Dear colleagues, Vice President Borrell, I want to address this to him. I come from a country that fought hard for its democracy and paid an enormous price in human lives in 1989. And what the history of my country taught me is that simply holding elections does not equal democracy. Elections under dictatorship are grotesque. 36 years later, I come here and ask you, does anyone think that elections held in a climate of terror can be considered free and fair? Imagine that on general election day, you put on your best clothes and head together with your family to the closest polling station. And there, as it happened in Uganda, you're met with violence and terror by your own government forces who are supposed to protect you. People are shot, arrested, opposition leaders are under house arrest, and worse. Do you trust the government the next day after such elections? Does the world trust that government the next day after such elections? We need to stop talking in riddles and agree on the fact that the 14 January election in Uganda ran against any policy of a free, safe, and equal election. President Museveni has been ruling for more than 3 decades now. He managed to fool everyone, global leaders, international organizations, even the European Union. What happened in Uganda before the elections is unthinkable in any country that we call democratic. Blocking access to the internet and social media prior to the election day is unacceptable. It leaves people in the darkness of disinformation. Bobi Wine, Uganda's opposition leader who conducted peaceful protests in order to condemn that the poll was rigged, has been put under house arrest for several days. Neither media nor party officials were allowed to access his home. Is that a fair chance? Is that a fair fighting chance? Mr. Borrell, I'm sorry that I have to say this, but I find myself in a position to tell you that our ambassador, Attilio Pacifici, and to him that your post-election regrets are not enough, because at least 50 people lost their life to police fire, because hundreds of other people were injured. So let us say it out loud. The elections in Uganda were neither peaceful, nor free, nor fair. Taking note of the results, as you did, Mr. Vice President, simply means accepting the result. Dear colleagues, if we do not act now, the shrinking of the democratic space will be more and more visible. This is something we see all over the world. We find ourselves being more and more an island of democracy and human rights. But we should be a standard for democracy and human rights. Ugandans know what they want because they told me, a few of them in Romania, where I come from. They want democracy, they want fair elections. And we, the European Union, must stand by them. Thank you.
Merci, Madame la.
Thank you very much, Madam President. Ladies and gentlemen, the Ugandan electoral campaign was marked by violence and by arbitrary arrests of the opposition of Mr. Museveni, Bobi Wine. Excessive force used by the police and security forces has seriously put questions over this whole electoral process, and we have the responsibility of not to sit by silently in the face of this violence and these actions. We condemn this violence and present our condolences to the victims. The elections took place in Uganda despite the massive reporting of irregularities. The Electoral Commission was not in a position to register more than 1 million young electors, claiming that there were not the resources to do that. They declared Museveni, the incumbent president, the new president for his 6th term, having carried out his mandates over 35 years. Despite this, the results of the elections are difficult to verify because the Electoral Commission has not followed the telling procedure. This is absolutely unacceptable and runs counter to democratic principles. Once again, we must not sit by and close our eyes when citizens of a state are deprived of their fundamental rights and call for help from us. They're asking for external help and indeed our support, and we have to proffer that support. Free and fair elections just as the rights of freedom of expression, freedom of the press, are prerequisites for sustainable development. Nevertheless, we would like to congratulate the Ugandan people, its youth especially, its women, its girls, for their enthusiasm, their commitment, and determination to maintain the democracy that they've managed to acquire. Let us not disappoint them. Let us show to them that we don't just preach but put our money where our mouth is. The COVID crisis cannot be a pretext to allow the Ugandan government to introduce laws which violate international law and violate the rights of citizens, including LGBTI citizens. We call on the Ugandan government to respect the dignity of individuals, and they facilitate the return for people to the cradle of creation. Thank you.
Please keep your speaking time. Unfortunately, because of the technical